And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third episode of Murphy's Mortuary. And welcome to volume one of us talking about the James Bond films. Now, of course, if I was to do all the James Bond movies in one stream, we'd be here for 10 hours. Because there's so much to talk about. There's so many movies and films in this franchise. And there's no way that I can cover all of them in one video, one stream, or anything like that. There's no way. It's not possible. Unless I had lots of money or cocaine or just a lot of time in my hands, endless time in my hands. Don't have any of those things. Might have some coffee. Definitely don't have some cocaine. I promise. But like, to cover all of them would be insane. And so what I did was I broke it down into actors that portrayed James Bond. And so different volumes will be different actors. Volume 2 will be the George Lazenby and the Roger Moore era 007. I don't know if I'll cover all those movies in one. It might be a two-parter. We'll see. Of course, in the third volume will be Dalton and Pierce Brosnan. And then the fourth volume will be, of course, the Daniel Craig era. And for those wondering, just throwing this out there, if you guys are wondering if I'm going to be covering the side stuff like the Casino Royale movie that came out and the James Bond stuff that came out before Dr. No, the only side movie I'm covering, which will be in this video, is going to be Never Say Never Again. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because Sean Connery stars in it. If they went out and casted somebody else and just made another movie with another actor, I probably wouldn't cover it. But for the fact that Sean Connery came back in that role as James Bond once again to play the character again, portray the character once more, I do feel like it is necessary and appropriate to put that movie in this discussion. Now, volume one of this, we're talking about the Sean Connery era. The films that we're talking about is from Dr. No all the way to Never Say Never Again. I believe it's 7 movies total, maybe 8. So there's not like a ton movie. Like, I mean, freaking Roger Moore, that volume is going to be insane. I think he did like 8 movies as James Bond. Plus, I got to talk about the George Lazenby film, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But a quick history with me and James Bond. Growing up, the secret agent genre was not for me. It was not for me. I always thought it was cheesy. I always thought it was corny. I always thought it was stupid. I always thought it was unbelievable. And all the tropes that I learned about from stuff like Austin Powers and, you know, the tropes and cliches that would become parodied in cartoons and other movies. I know Ace Ventura had a parody of James Bond. The Naked Gun movies parodied James Bond a lot. Of course, like I said, Austin Powers. I grew up with Austin Powers. I actually have it right over here because I was watching it last night. Well, actually, I have them both. Real cheap DVDs. I love these movies. Some of my favorite comedies. Great trilogy for both trilogies. So yeah, that's kind of what I grew up with secret agent stuff. The only James Bond anything that I had actually played, seen, read, anything like that was the GoldenEye video game from the Nintendo 64. I used to have one growing up, and we used to play Mario Kart and all the Mario games and, you know, Banjo-Kazooie. And one of my favorite games to play on the Nintendo 64 was GoldenEye. I think GoldenEye is still to this day a very impressive, well-made, historic, and just important video game. Without that game, certain things would not be done in future first-person shooter games. And that was the only thing that I knew about James Bond. I had always heard about James Bond. James Bond, especially when I got on YouTube and started covering films, everybody's like, James Bond, James Bond. And I remember that WoW On Demand, I'd go on there and I would look up the trailers for certain movies. And I won't lie, look up the trailers for these movies. It was always interesting to me. They always had just very well edited trailers. The posters are always beautiful looking. So they always were presented as interesting. You know, I looked up all the trailers for all the old school movies. And of course, I grew up with technically I grew up with Daniel Craig because he was the Bond when I was a kid. But I only really watched one movie for the longest time, and that was GoldenEye, the movie. Because I had played the video game. I really loved the video game, so I was like, I'll watch the movie. I love GoldenEye. That's a great movie. Easily one of my favorite James Bond movies is GoldenEye. Solid first entry for Pierce Brosnan. We'll get to that one when we get to it. But it made me want to go back and check out James Bond. So what I did was I went out and I used to have a really cool Goldfinger VHS tape, which was really cool looking. Although the front of it, you could tell it was not Sean Connery. There was no way that was Sean Connery on the front of it. It looked nothing like him, the VHS I had. But I had like the old school VHS tapes of Goldfinger and Dr. No. And of course, Dr. No being the first James Bond movie, I watched that first. And I don't think I ever got a chance to watch that Goldfinger VHS tape. And those tapes are long gone. I've replaced them with this really nice, well, I'll say this. For the price, and depending on where you go, it'll be between 50 to 70 bucks, sometimes 90 bucks. If it's anything above 90, it's a ripoff. Don't get this for 90. I got this for 50 bucks. It was on sale. You get all the movies all the way up until Spectre. That's the last movie in this set. And of course, I bought No Time to Die on Blu-ray. And I also do have a singular DVD because this was not included in the James Bond set. This is considered non-canon in the series, so they don't put it in the set. So I had to go pick up Never Say Never Again, which we'll be bringing that up here in a minute. But yeah, I had seen Dr. No, and that was sort of my first introduction to James Bond, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I wanted to go out and start my journey. I still haven't finished it yet. The next James Bond movie I have to watch is Moonraker, which I will say so far it's pretty cheesy, but the opening of Moonraker is amazing. Of the plane scene, if you guys have seen that movie, you know I'm talking about the skydiving sequence. Amazing opening to Moonraker. I don't know why that opening to Moonraker was so much more better than it had any right of being. And why I say this is a serviceable, decent set. I don't think it's good for someone like me who's wanting to get into James Bond. The transfers are pretty decent. Some of them look better than others. Also, there's tons of features. Almost every movie has a commentary or two. Almost every movie has a documentary or a featurette or interviews or, just endless stuff. Really endless stuff. Constantly something's going on with the special features. So I will say, for like a casual person going into the James Bond movies to get them all in one set, like I said, don't pay too much for it, as I know Best Buy was like wanting $90 for it. Don't pay that much. Look around. If you really want to get into James Bond, I recommend this set. I recommend it if you're wanting to get into it. If you're a fan of James Bond and you're wanting the ultimate collection, I do think there could be some fixing, because this is your artwork for this. There's 3 cases. The thinnest one is the Daniel Craig ones, because it's just the Daniel Craig movies, which was, I think, 4 or 5 in this set. What was it? Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre. So that's the only ones they got for Daniel Craig. So that's why it's the smallest one. And they all look the same. And that's what I mean. I feel like this franchise deserves work. Like, why did you? So if this has pretty much from the Connery era all the way till the beginning of the Roger Moore era. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Strange Dog comic stuff. How you doing? I think that's Ian. Yep. Hey, Ian, how you doing? Talking about some James Bond today. But yeah, this is, if you want to do a set where you have all of these movies in here, just do a collage artwork. Like, imagine how this would look if they put artwork all around the case and just moments from the movies, or hell, put a collage of the posters, do something. And the artwork on the discs, I'll show you the one for the first one we'll be talking about, which is Dr. No. This is the artwork on every single disc, which is, at least it's not a blank gray disc, but You could have at least put the poster on there or something to make it stand out a little bit. And I feel like if they're able to do it, it'd be cool to get these in a 4K set. Now, that 4K set would be insane money. It would probably be released in parts, like the Connery movies in 4K. George Lazenby, you know, how basically I'll be breaking them down is how they probably be broken down for 4K. Or maybe they would just do like 4 movies a piece, 4 movies per pack. There we go. But yeah, so this is just going to show you guys real quick the packaging. Now, the inside artwork is decent, nothing special, but it's just a collage of the titles of the movies. It's pretty much all they are. So I figured I would just show you guys that, just so that if it doesn't pop up again for the rest of these videos, that's why, because there's just not really much to show. And I think what it is I wouldn't mind the simplistic artwork on the front if they would just do something better on the inside. But of course, there's all the James Bonds. Get a little bit of a closer look. And so, yeah, I think for casuals, if you're wanting to get into James Bond, it's a decent set. But enough with all that. We're going to be getting into the discussion now. If you guys want to ask some questions, have any comments, I'll be reading them out in this. The last show I did, I was pretty rushed because I had like no time to do that video. And I was like, oh my God, I got to rush. So I didn't have time to read comments or anything like that. So this will be much more relaxed, chilled out, taking my time, movie by movie. And we're going to be talking about the Sean Connery era of James Bond. And of course, we got to start with the very first James Bond movie, the one that started it all, the classic. This is a classic film. Dr. No from 1962. Now, Dr. No, I think is a film that when you look back on it, not only is it important for the James Bond movies, you know, you're getting Sean Connery in there as James Bond. I know Ian Fleming was not a big fan of that. I heard Ian Fleming is like a horrible person, honestly. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, would Ian Fleming approve of this? And it's like, I think he's a pretty bad person. Not you, Ian, but the Ian Fleming that made these movies, or that wrote the books, rather. I heard he's a pretty awful person. But just from the details I've heard, yo, I don't know the guy. I know Ian in the chat. Ian in the chat's cool. But Ian Fleming, I heard pretty bad stuff about the guy. He's like sexist and kind of racist. And you can see that bleed into the work a little bit. And yes, the thing about James Bond, and I've noticed this, if you go back and watch these movies, you've got to understand the time period. You've got to understand the books these came from. And you've got to understand this character of who James Bond is. And as long as you can watch these movies with that mindset and just being like, okay, this is 1964, 1962, whatever. This is way back in the day. This is the first movie. This is based off of a book that a guy who is sexist and racist and, well, supposedly he's sexist and racist. I guess I don't fucking know, but I've heard the rumors. But like the material it's based off of, and apparently the books go even farther than the movies do. The movies go pretty far with some stuff, and yes, there are some racist moments, there are some sexist moments, there are moments that are kind of uncomfortable to watch. But for these movies, for how long these movies are, these usually are like 2 hours long a piece at least. There's a lot more going on than just those scenes. And those scenes, do I agree with when that stuff happens? No. The scene in Goldfinger where James Bond pretty much rapes a chick. I mean, he doesn't, rape her, but he pretty much forces himself onto her and is just forcing her to talk to him and make out with him. That's uncomfortable to watch. Him groping women and touching. It's just that stuff, him smacking women, that stuff is uncomfortable to watch. But when you get into just what these movies are pure entertainment fun. They are very entertaining. They are very just lush to watch. And Dr. No is a wonderful start to these films. And it's a very simple plot. Dr. No works with Spectre. And there's this idea where they're disrupting, it says here, disruption of the American space program, which essentially with these movies, the plots, they kind of matter, but you don't have to pay total attention. all you really need to know with these James Bond movies is Spectre or Blofeld or some other big villain is doing something that causes a world travesty, and James Bond has to stop him. Here, the villain is Dr. No, this guy, this character who is a white man playing an Asian guy. So you do have some racism there, or some controversy there. But Dr. No is this character who has these sort of robotic hands and can crush things. It's a pretty cool gimmick for the character. I really like this actor who played him too. He, good first villain, solid first villain. I want to say he comes back in the video games, but I'm not sure. Also, real quick to throw this in there. Growing up, I used to play a game called GoldenEye Rogue Agent. If anybody out there has played GoldenEye Rogue Agent, you're awesome, because I don't run to any other people who talk about GoldenEye Rogue Agent. Not GoldenEye, but GoldenEye Rogue Agent for the PS2. It's a game that's so bad it's good. It's trying to be so futuristic and cool that it ends up being like a fucking vomit fest of sci-fi. Like it's pretty bizarre where they go in that game. But to get back to Dr. No, the villain in this, Dr. No, I think he's a cool villain. He's very serious, down to earth, more quiet, more, like I said, down to earth, serious villain for the James Bond movies. And in this movie, James Bond is not using a lot of gadgets. He's just using what he has, his combat skills, his survival skills, the way he talks to the women to get information, and how he talks to people, just very, very bare minimum with the stuff in this movie. This is much more James Bond. Like, there's a scene where he literally takes a piece of hair off his head and like puts it on this doorway so that he knows if that hair is gone, somebody opened the door, which I thought was a pretty clever way to do that. This movie is wonderful. I mean, you got the debut movie with a really interesting opening where it's like very 1960s psychedelic opening with bright colors and a good intro. Not really any song to this first movie where it's like Dr. No, Dr. No. None of that. It's just the James Bond theme song, the opening, gun barrel scene, which is very different from what we would see in future stuff. And you got Sean Connery in this movie being very suave, being very just not really worried about anything. Just the confidence levels up. The scene where he's gambling, the first introduction to James Bond, is one of my favorite scenes in cinema, where James Bond is just gambling and, he's going all for it. And the chick he's playing against is like, and you are? And he's like, Bond, James Bond. It's a classic line. I mean, these movies have been parodied and referenced for years, and they will continue to be parodied and referenced for years. And just the lush locations. I think it takes place in the Bahamas. John Steele's here. What's up, John? How you doing, man? But just the locations. I want to say Ursula Andrew? Yeah, Ursula Andrews as the Bond girl in this movie. Wonderful, wonderful. Honey Ryder is the character's name. Wonderful Bond girl, beautiful. Probably one of my top 5 Bond girls. Just wonderful, just absolutely beautiful. And just the locations, just the way it's all shot, the practicality of it. It takes its time. The pacing's a bit slow, but not too slow. These first 2 James Bond movies have that slow pacing, and it carries on in Thunderball, but we'll get to my thoughts on that in a minute. These first 2 James Bond movies are very low-key. They're just easy watches, simple to get through, move along, locations, costumes, set design. I love the ending in the lair of Dr. No, where James Bond is having to escape, and he's almost being killed left and right, and he's fighting people off. I love that ending. And it's so funny watching Austin Powers. When you go into these movies, you notice little things here and there, like the costume that Dr. No is wearing kind of looks like the thing that Dr. Evil wears in Austin Powers 1. Just really good stuff. I think there's radiation in this scene though, which is dude, they mention radiation in 007 like it's nothing. Like, oh yeah, where we're at right now is very radioactive. I'm like, well then why aren't y'all dead? there's like the radiation core over here. They're right next to it, and they're not getting affected. And it blows up and everything. And there's radiation leaking everywhere. And they're over here like, yeah, it's just over there. It's like, no, there is no. Oh, it's just over there. You're dead. You got radiation poisoning. It's right there. And like Dr. No, of course, the death scene of him falling down into this pit of like, I think it's radiation or acid or something like that. Pretty cool death scene. Good fight scenes. There's a scene that's really brutal where James Bond watches this guy shoot because he has this trap set up where the guy shoots this thing, but it ends up being a trap. And he's like, you're using a gun that only has 6 shots and you've just used your 6th. And he just shoots the guy in cold blood, like boom, boom, dead. And it was pretty like impactful. I was like, whoa, this guy has been playing around. And yeah, just the way Sean Connery plays it, the alpha male, suave, the way he talks to women. It's just, yeah, I don't agree with him fucking smacking women and shit. But when he's talking to them, you know, just having conversation, finding ways to kind of go from situation to situation, staying calm, staying collective, very smart, very just ready for anything. And just, yeah, I love the characters we meet along the way, like Q and M and Dr. No and this movie that, you know, just and think in every movie you'd also get the character Felix, which I think it's Jack Lord in this. He's pretty good as Felix. Felix though would kind of struggle after this. Sorry, I don't have any tissues, man, but my freaking nose is running real quick. I'm gonna go get a freaking tissue or a rag or something, guys. My freaking nose is like leaking. I swear, I'm not doing coke. But the drugs are bad, kids. Oh shit. Well, I don't think I have a rag with me. All right. Well, I got a towel in here or something. I got something. Sorry about that, guys. Freaking. I got a towel. It's the best I can get. But freaking sinuses have been killing me lately, man. But yeah, this first James Bond movie, Dr. No, wonderful intro to the films and the franchise. And just, yeah, very straightforward, very well done. I really enjoyed Dr. No. You know, the music is so good in these movies. I think I was talking about how Felix is a character who kind of, he's an okay character in these early ones, but really he gets better as it goes. His character, just whether it's the actors or just the importance of the character Felix, just kind of dwindles as the series goes along. So it ends up feeling like I don't know, it ends up feeling like he gets better as the movies move on the franchise. But Dr. No's a solid one. 3.5 out of 5 from me. I really enjoy it. What a wonderful start to the James Bond franchise. Just all around a good movie. And of course, pretty low budget movie. These movies didn't have, at least in the beginning, didn't have these huge budgets. And it was a big hit. I mean, James Bond became the cultural thing. You know, everybody was trying to be like James Bond, and the one-liners and just everything that was going on. It became this big, massive movement. And of course, not long later, a year later to be exact, we got From Russia with Love from 1963, which gets 7.3 on IMDb by Terrence Young, which, did he do the first one? Dr. No, I'm just checking if he made the first one too. Yeah, so Terrence Young came back to direct this. I don't know how many more he would direct, but you got Sean Connery coming back in this. Robert Shaw plays the villain Grant in this. I love Robert Shaw in this movie. You also have a Bond character in this, Tatiana. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And basically what this is James Bond. He's meeting up with this Russian chick, and I think she's like targeted. They're trying to kill her. He has to find out where this encryption device is that Spectre stole. Meanwhile, Robert Shaw from Jaws, which is a very different role for him here, he's a great villain. Technically, he's not the main villain because the main villain of this, I think, is Blofeld. I want to say, maybe not. Well, there's no Blofeld, but there's a oh yeah, there is a Blofeld in this. Wow. But basically, Blofeld is the higher up villain. Robert Shaw is sort of the muscle. But he ends up having this movie all on his own, just be him being the villain throughout. You don't really see a lot of Blofeld. That's weird. Sometimes Blofeld is the main villain. Sometimes he's the background villain. He just sent other people out to do his work. And I like the idea of Spectre, this mysterious organization that got mentioned in the first movie and became the big deal of the series. Unfortunately, they ran into some legal issues for a while because the guy that wrote Thunderball, he came up with Spectre, he came up with other things that they mentioned, and so after this, you didn't get Spectre to come back until the 80s, I think. So they weren't really able to use Spectre a whole lot in the franchise, and they even remade certain movies because certain films couldn't mention Spectre. So they had to go back and remake them. But yeah, this one is just James Bond on the run. It's definitely a movie where he's on the run, dodging the enemies here and there. He's in Russia, so different location in Russia. Robert Shaw is just, chasing him down, chasing him and this chick down everywhere they go. And it's, like I said, a much more low key, slower film. And this one, From Russia with Love, you would think I wouldn't like it because it's really not a lot of action. It's not a lot. There is action there. There's some good stuff there. There's some cool fight scenes. I think in this one you have the briefcase gadget where it's basically the Swiss Army briefcase. There's just different things in this briefcase. So they got their first gadget in this movie, I believe. And really a lot of it is just dialogue, knowing the characters, James Bond moving from place to place, him dealing with these villains, the villains planning this stuff out with James Bond. And really a lot of it is just him, moving along, getting chased and evading danger. And so it's not like he's going through big action scene, big action scene, big action scene. It's more of a low-key, more straightforward James Bond movie. And I really enjoyed that. Most of the actions towards the end of the movie, you have a wonderful fight scene between James Bond and this character that Robert Shaw plays, Grant, where they're fighting on the train. The train scene was pretty cool. I like just a very well done as far as choreograph of the fight scenes, or of that fight scene in particular goes. And once again, a wonderful score. I think, Sean Connery is at his best when he's James Bond. It's never a dull moment as James Bond, even in stuff like Diamonds Are Forever and Never It's Never Again. I think he's really good in those movies. Good locations, decent villains. It's a more slower paced movie, but I didn't mind that. I think From Russia with Love is a great sequel. I really enjoy it. It's great, and it's definitely like this and Dr. No the same level, 3.5, out of 5, which sounds kind of low, but they're fun. They're fun. They're entertaining. There's some things here and there that don't really age well, whether it's the green screen or whatever, but or the un-PC nature of it. But for the most part, it's entertaining, popcorn action. I like the relationship between James Bond and this character, Tatiana. And like or is it Tatiana? I think it is Tatiana. Yeah. Yeah, because she's meant to be trained to kill James Bond and betray him. She ends up falling in love with James Bond. I remember this now. And it is kind of weird because, and I mean, I get it. Every James Bond movie is like this, where he'll fall in love with the chick, they'll end the movie together, and then she disappears in the next movie. I think Austin Powers would even do that. But like here, it seems like he really is in love with her. So it was like, okay, although I can't remember if she's alive or does she live to this movie? I can't remember if she lives to this movie or not. But if she does, she doesn't come back. But yeah, it's a solid second movie. Solid 3.5 out of 5 for me. It's solid. It's well done. It's well filmed. Some good action scenes. And Sean Connery is back. I definitely recommend it. Then we get to the third one. 1965. We got the underwater James Bond movie, and that is Thunderball. Thunderball, 6.9 on IMDb, so not as high as the other ones. Terrence Young directing this one once again. So he made a lot of these movies. I don't hate Thunderball. I'm not a big fan of it, though. I'm not a big fan of it. I think this movie, it's over 2 hours long, and most of these movies are over 2 hours long, but this one, they tried, and I can appreciate the fact that they, go big or go home. Let's increase the budget. Let's have more action scenes. Let's have some more set pieces. Let's have our gimmick as the underwater movie. Let's have most of it underwater. And so in theory, it should work. It should be better than the first two movies. For me, while I can appreciate what they were going for, and I can say it has great action scenes, Sean Connery, you will never hear me say he sucks as James Bond. He is a great once again in this film. The locations are okay. It's kind of one of those things where I don't think it really ups any of the locations from the first one. It's nice, it's tropical, it's beautiful, but it really looks like the first one again. And so the locations don't really look that different. The villain in this movie to me is pretty lame. I don't like the villain, Largo. I'm really not a fan of this villain. It's just so generic, so run-of-the-mill, so uninteresting. And I think with this movie, and again, the plot, I mean, you got these warheads that have been stolen by Spectre, and James Bond has to figure out where they are, or they're going to blow up. So it should be cool, and there's a scene where they're gathering the bombs, and I thought that was kind of boring. I think the movie just doesn't really have a flow to it. That's what I really didn't like about this movie is there's no energy flow to it. There's no flow of the pacing. It's just kind of a lot of slowness, and the underwater scenes are meant to be exciting. To me, they drag. They just don't have any impact. The plot kind of, moves around here and there, doesn't really go anywhere. Or if it does, it's just not interesting. This villain is not interesting. The coolest thing about him is he has this pool in his backyard that has sharks in it, and that's a cool scene. There are some cool action scenes. There's a scene where James Bond gets trapped under this pool, and there are sharks swimming up to him, and they're real sharks. And I think for the most part, it's real Sean Connery there. So that shit, I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate the technical side of things where shooting underwater this long, doing this many scenes, technically an achievement for film there. I think it really is a big step forward for that stuff. Because at this time, it was hard to film underwater. It was very, very hard. And I commend them for filming underwater. But these scenes are meant to be suspenseful. They're meant to be thrilling. To me, it's a bunch of people. It's a bunch. I can't talk. It's a bunch of people, if I can fucking speak, moving like this. Oh, blew up, explosion, I'm running. Like, I don't know. I think it's just underwater movies to me, if they're not done well, I find them boring. And people are going to freaking think I'm crazy for saying this. I'm not a big fan of Creature from the Black Lagoon for the same reasons where these scenes underwater, they're just, 5 minutes of this, of swimming. And I don't know. I find it monotonous. I find it slow. And some movies I like underwater, like Leviathan. I really like Leviathan. I really like Deep Blue Sea, Open Water. So there is water movies I like. It ain't like I just hate water movies, but like if it's not done well, it bores me. And here it bored me, man. It was just a lot of dry spots, a lot of moments where nothing much was happening in this film. The ending is very impressive. I will give this movie this. The ending taking place on this big, like, I don't know, it's like an oil refinery or something. It's just big set and just explosions, and even the Bond girl picks up the gun and is firing at people, and there's just this big set. Very, very cool idea for the ending here. So I really enjoyed that. That was a cool idea for the ending of this huge set at this location that takes place. It's very, very cool. Or am I thinking? I hope that's the one I'm thinking about. I think I am thinking of the right place though, because there's that. Then there's the lair of the villain, which is also underwater. Surprise. But yeah, it's just a lot of okay. So the good things. I want to get into the good things. Sean Connery, the Bond girls are okay in here. None of them really stand out, but they're okay. The location, it's nice to look at. It's well filmed. It is well directed. It does have the music. The Thunderball theme song I like Thunderball. I forgot to mention too from Rush with Love. That's when they really started to do that whole title of the movie is the theme song. From Russia with Love. I love From Russia with Love's theme song. This one I really like too. I actually have them on my playlist, man. Good stuff. But yeah, like the theme song, like the gimmick of the movie is cool. The water, the ending is very, very well done. But it's just the whole in between. That slowness, just dragging its feet, not really going anywhere, not really doing much. That's where I'm just like, okay, there's the problems. There's the problems there's where I'm like, okay, I'm not really a fan of that stuff. But Thunderball, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's okay. It's serviceable. It's entertaining, but I don't think it's one of my favorites. It's probably one of my least favorites. And this movie was when a lot of problems were happening because the guy that made up the Spectre group and came up with the characters and certain terms and everything that they would use in the franchise and become a big deal, he wasn't getting paid. Supposedly he wasn't getting paid for what he created, so they said, okay, we'll make Thunderball, we'll release it, and in a decade or so you can make your own movie, and you own the rights right now, and we own our rights. So they basically split ways, and never say never would happen, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So after this, you wouldn't really hear Spectre be brung up again, and you have Blofeld, but Spectre, you don't really hear that brung up anymore for the rest of these movies. But once again, a pretty decent hit. I don't think it made as much money as the other ones, but it was a decent enough hit to get another sequel. And of course, we come to one of my favorite James Bond movies. I would say probably my second favorite James Bond movie, and easily is just one of my favorite well, not only one of my favorite movies in this franchise, but one of my favorite movies from the 60s, one of my favorite movies from that time period. Oh, did I accidentally skip Was Goldfinger number 3? Oh shit, my bad. I was a movie off. Okay, so I mentioned Thunderball is part 3, Goldfinger's part 3. Damn. Well, I already talked about Thunderball, so we'll move on from that. Sorry. I always thought Thunderball came out after Goldfinger. I did not remember that it came out before. Wow. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up the movies in order so that I know when they came out. Sorry about that, guys. But oh yeah, I only mixed up though. I only talked about it just a little bit too early. But the third movie in the series was Goldfinger. And this one, what a wonderful, well done, well made film that is a fan favorite in the series. Like I said, I think it's one of the best action movies from the 60s. I think it does a lot of great things. And of course, it's my second favorite. It's wonderful. You got the main villain, Goldfinger, which is a great villain. classic villain. James Bond coming back here. There's a plot where they're planning on going to Fort Knox and contaminating the gold with radiation. Once again, radiation being brought back into this. I'm like, you guys just use radiation so casually. But in this movie, you got a wonderful cast. Gert Frobe? I can't pronounce his name. But the guy that played Goldfinger did a wonderful job. Pussy Galore is in this movie. Honor Blackman, great job as Pussy Galore. And of course, a classic Bond girl, that scene, what's your name? My name is Pussy Galore. I must be dreaming. And Sean Connery, man, this is probably his best portrayal of the character. He is just on every scene in this movie at his best in Goldfinger. The idea that this guy, whenever he kills these people that give away information, he paints them gold, which is a weird gimmick, but interesting. And just wonderful action scenes. The ending just goes on and on and on in a good way, where it just unfolds, and there's plenty of action in this movie. They definitely bumped up the action and made it even more prevalent in this film. There's just a lot more Bond girls. There's a lot more bigger set designs and things happening. It's a big movie. Big movie for Bond. It was a huge hit. Helped James Bond get pushed even more into the stratosphere. And I think why it's considered one of the best ones is because every element of this movie is just on point. The direction, the music, the opening song is my favorite opening song. Goldfinger, just that performance, so well done. The villain, Goldfinger, fun villain, having a lot of fun with that role. Iconic scenes, whether it's "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die," or the scene where everybody makes fun of it, where he has all these villains in the room. Goldfinger's here, and there's villains everywhere. And his whole thing he has to do is press a button, and the whole room moves and shifts, and this big giant thing comes up. He says, "Here's my plan," and then he just freaking kills them all. And so it's like, man, he drugged that out for 10 minutes just to kill these guys off. So Goldfinger is like, he's a villain that's having fun. He's the villain that's crazy. He's in for it for himself. He's not about just getting rich and world domination and this and that. He's just crazy. He's out of his mind. He's doing it because he can. And it's a wonderful villain. James Bond, the costumes, the suits he wears in this movie, classic stuff. Wonderful costume design, good characters. Guy Hamilton directed this movie. Wonderful film. I mean, it's a landmark film. And not just for James Bond, but also for film in general. I think Goldfinger is one of the most important films out there because it showed what could be done with the action and the effects. And the effects are bumped up in this movie. A lot of the effects look great here. Goldfinger is a classic. It's a masterpiece, and it's not my personal favorite James Bond movie, but it is one of the best made James Bond movies out there. If you would say it's your favorite, there's no wrong there. It's wonderful. Goldfinger, of course, gets a 5 out of 5. It's wonderful. One of my favorites. And really showed up the first two. I regret saying that the third one was Thunderball because I don't know why, but I always think Thunderball's part 3, but it's part 4. But maybe that's also why Thunderball is disappointing, because here you have these big scenes and cool story, great villain, wonderful just Bond girls. However, there is one scene in this movie that's very, very dated and very awful, where you get the idea that Pussy Galore is a lesbian in this movie. They don't say it outright. I know in the novel it was said outright, but in the movie they don't say it. There is no dialogue of her saying she's a lesbian, but it is heavily implied that she's a lesbian. And it's kind of weird that she has this squad of lesbians that fly planes around and try to kill James Bond. That happens too. But James Bond pushes her down on the ground, holds her down, is kissing her. he's like, basically like trying to get her to turn straight or something. It's really definitely the worst scene of the movie. That scene in the movie, it was hard for me to like James Bond after that. I won't lie. It was great. There was a couple of other things where I was like, okay, he's smacking women, he's cheating on. He'll talk to this woman while being with 3 chicks over here, so it's like he's a womanizer. But yeah, that's the character. But like when he does that, it's just like it tickles. No, it took a lot to. I'm all over the fucking place today, guys. He just tickles her. That's all he does. But it takes a lot to like the James Bond character after that because of how far he takes that, and it's pretty uncomfortable. But the rest of the movie, luckily, strays away from that, and it's more about the action and the set pieces and stuff. So while I can appreciate these movies, I can definitely say that there is some problems there with that stuff. But yeah, Goldfinger, wonderful film, 5 out of 5, love it to death. Great film, wonderful achievement for Hollywood and film. Yeah, Goldfinger is a great one. So we already talked about Thunderball, so we're going to move to another one of my favorites, You Only Live Twice. This is the Japan 007 movie. One of my favorite one of my reasons why it's one of my favorites is because of the location in Japan. And basically, Sean Connery is investigating these series of hijackings. And it's about to be this war that breaks out between Russia and the United States. And so he has to go over to Japan and figure out why this is happening, who's causing this, and you find out that Blofeld's involved. Of course, Blofeld is involved. This one gets a 6.8 on IMDb, directed by Lewis Gilbert. And Blofeld in this movie is played by Donald Pleasance. And this is the movie with the secret volcano lair. And just, yeah, it's such a fun movie. This is definitely one of the fun ones. You go into this one for a serious film, you're going to be disappointed. Because Goldfinger, it's fun, but it's serious. It has moments. Dr. No is a very serious movie. From Russia to Love, very serious movie. So this one is definitely one of the more popcorn, entertainment factor, over-the-top James Bond movies. And yes, there is more offensive stuff in this movie. But I think what really helps it is, like I said, again, the action scenes, the direction, the acting, the wonderful sets. The volcano set is amazing. The location of the lair, the volcano lair. Very fun ending. And the movie has a fun energy to it. Just a fun energy of James Bond flying this little tiny helicopter through the air, and he's fighting people, and just good action scenes, more reliant on action and more on set pieces. This is definitely one where it's less about the story and more about what's going on the screen. The Bond girls are pretty good in this one too. Donald Pleasance is probably my favorite Blofeld. It's either him or the guy from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Donald Pleasance does a great job as Blofeld. Yeah, I mean, good locations and everything. I think where it really struggles, though, is there is some things that are pretty offensive. James Bond has to learn the ways of the ninja. And so in order for him to do that, they have to, like, paint his skin a different color and slant his eyes and give him a samurai outfit. Or is it a samurai? They give him, like, a samurai outfit. And it's just like, what the fuck? That was just like, had me like, oh my God, they really went there. They really fucking painted this man's face different color. Oh my God, they slanted his fucking eyes. I could not believe they did that shit. That was so bad. That was bad. I think that, like I said, there's not much the plot here. It's not trying to have a great plot. It's more trying to just have entertaining scenes, big scenes. The ending is wonderful. The practicality of the volcano set. Hey Chuck, how's it going? How you doing today, man? I'm doing well. Just chilling, talking about James Bond. Earlier, I was running around, been watching Mindhunter and stuff. Tonight I might watch one of these James Bond movies. I don't know. But yeah, You Only Live Twice, one of my favorites because of just the entertainment factor, the location, the action, Sean Connery, pretty much the reasons why all the other ones work. Just very well done. I'm not going to rate it as high as Goldfinger. I'd give it a 4 out of 5, but it's still a 4 out. I really enjoy it. Wonderful film. Oh, that's good, Chuck. Yeah, wonderful film. Very well done. And You Only Live Twice. Great entry in the James Bond series. And after this, James Bond kind of went through a weird period because this is when Sean Connery stepped away from the series. He did this, stepped away because I think he wanted too much money and he wanted to change some stuff around. And they were like, well, we're not sure if we're going to pay you that much. And so he said, okay. So he walked away. And On Her Majesty's Secret Service came out after this, which we'll talk about next time with the Roger Moore era, but mostly we're talking about the first George Lazenby movie. But there's only one movie he ever did, so I'm just going to throw it in there, the Roger Moore movies. However, in 1971, so quite a while later, 1967 to 1971, there was no Sean Connery as James Bond. The reception for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, so hard to say that, especially tonight. Maybe I need some water. I don't know, man. Freaking can't talk. But On Her Majesty's Secret Service. There we fucking go. I can't say it. I apologize. I think the thing with this stream is people are just gonna watch it back and be like, okay, let's just see how many words he can fuck up in this one stream. We gotta have a little counter up here because I'm just fucking it up everywhere. But quite a while later, Diamonds Are Forever, 1971. And this is one of the most poorly received James Bond movies. Considered disappointing, considered one of the more lower rated films in James Bond. The fans are not big on it. People didn't like Sean Connery's performance in this movie. People said this movie was too goofy, too silly, too over the top, lame plot. For me, I really enjoyed Diamonds Are Forever. I can't lie. I do really enjoy this movie. I would say it's definitely like slightly better than I would say I like You Only Live Twice better than this. But I will say Diamonds Are Forever is a fun movie. The Vegas location, the idea that Blofeld is back, but Blofeld in this movie is cloned. So you have the clones of Blofeld. And it's weird because the guy that plays Blofeld in this, or all the Blofelds, this guy, Charles Gray, was in another James Bond movie. I think he was in You Only Live Twice. So the fact that he came back in this movie to play Blofeld is weird. It was like, you were already playing another character. But him, he's okay as Blofeld. He's the generic villain with the cigarette and just, Bond, welcome. Just generic. Like his Blofeld is so like, all right, let's just get this done. Let me copy everything. Boom, done. It's just copy and paste Blofeld here. He's fun though, and it's funny because he would show up in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I remember seeing that. I'm like, man, he's over there dancing. It's just a shake of the hips. It's so fun to see him in that. Here, he's really over the top and hamming it up as Blofeld. And it's a simple plot. You've got a diamond smuggling thing happening where there's the scandal happening with these diamonds, and James Bond is called in to help out with this. Of course, they for a little bit mentioned the revenge part of what happens in the previous film where his wife was killed in that film. And then here he's kind of vicious in the open and he's killing people off. Where is Blofeld? Where is he? And then they kind of forget about it. It's like the very opening of the movie, he's vicious, he's just killing these people left and right, finds what he thinks is Blowfield, but it ends up being a clone. And after that, he goes back to normal James Bond. He just forgets about it, forgets about the revenge, and just goes back to flirting with chicks again. And I will say, it's not as big or as elaborate as the other James Bond movies. A lot of the action scenes, they're okay. I wouldn't say they're anything standing out. Yes, the plot is very simple, very, very simple. But there are things I like about it. First of all, Sean Connery. Second of all, the direction by Guy Hamilton. The location of Las Vegas. Cool. I like the set design once again. Pretty much all the same reasons. I do think that the action scenes are kind of simplistic in this and very minimum. I think it keeps a lot of the entertainment factors, though. I think it's still entertaining enough to say that it's a pretty damn good James Bond movie. And the Bond girls, once again, great in this movie. I think where the problems come in is the side characters, the scenes that take place in these other locations. The side lame. I don't really care about Felix in this movie. Is he in this movie? I don't even know if he's in this movie. He's not popping up at all. But Felix, like, he doesn't even pop up in this movie. But there's this guy. Who is this fucking guy? Is it Albert Saxby? This is really like, is it William White? I can't remember. Or Willard White. I can't remember who the character is, but he's a really annoying side character who helps out James Bond. There is some lame stuff here and there, but I think overall it is a fun one. It's an entertaining film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the side villains, these two guys who... Oh, no, I think this is who they were. Wait, is it? Mr. Kidd and Mr. Went. Bruce Glover and Putter Smith. These two characters were probably the best parts of the movie, the most entertaining parts of the movie. I like their characters of them going around and killing these people out that get in their way. They're fun side villains. They're hinted at as being gay, but they don't outright say it. Yeah, I mean, Diamonds Are Forever, while it's not on the level of some other ones like Dr. No or You Only Live Twice or Goldfinger, I think it's still entertaining enough to call it a good movie. I'm gonna give it a solid 3 out of 5. I enjoyed Diamonds Are Forever. It's a fun one. But after this, Sean Connery stepped away. Whether it was just to not play James Bond anymore, or it was to save the studio some money because it was costing a lot of money to have him as James Bond. And so this, for the longest time, was the final time that Sean Connery played James Bond. And technically, canon-wise, this was the last time he played James Bond. Because after this, canon-wise, he was not James Bond in the franchise anymore. However, all the way in 1983, if you remember when I talked about Thunderball, the legal issue, they said, a decade or so, you can make your own movie and produce it and do whatever. And so, when the time came, in 1983, we got Never Say Never Again. Weird, man. Weird alternate reality experience here. Because this is technically a remake of Thunderball, but it's very different. Very different. The only similarities are there's a handful of underwater scenes. There's the idea of the warheads being stolen and they got to figure out where they're at. The idea that James Bond is in this place, this rehab place, to become healthier. Other than that, different stuff. Different villain, different love interest, different cast. A pretty different experience in this film. And Never Say Never Again, it's weird because it feels like there are moments of James Bond. There are moments of it being a James Bond movie. I don't know if the whole movie is a James Bond film. It feels like they're trying to have it be serious, but then they're trying to have it be funny. They're trying to take it serious, then try to have fun with it. And I don't know if that really works. Of course, in this movie, they couldn't have the gun barrel opening, so they had to have it to where there's a bunch of 007s flying at the screen. James Bond's older in this. He's a little bit run down, has to train, and he's getting sloppy on his missions. Whenever he's training, he's just, slacking, not doing well. So they send him away to this rehabilitation place. He gets attacked by somebody there and finds out that he's been given a new assignment to work on to kind of improve his skills. And that's the same plot as Thunderball, where they steal these missiles. And the way they do it in this movie is so goddamn cheesy, where this guy has a fake eye that's bright blue, not blue, bright blue. And he uses that and somehow scanning the eye gives him access because it's the president's contact. I'm like, wait a minute. Who the fuck made that mold? If that's the mold of the president's eye, who made that? The president? Who the fuck did that? But like, he uses his fake eye to scan and get access to the warheads. And James Bond has to figure out where they're at. And you don't get no Q, you don't get no M. You get different characters in this movie, or maybe you do have a character called M, but it's just a much different portrayal of the character. Definitely different. This is a film where if you go into it if you expect what you've seen in the previous movies, you're not really getting the same stuff. I guess here his name is M. Edward Fox, a different M, very, very different. You have Felix here, Bernie Casey, one of my favorite Felixes. I think Felix, from like Live and Let Die to wherever I stopped at, that's when it got good. Before that, Felix was just kind of a side character. You didn't really care much about the character Felix. Here, one of the better portrayals of the characters in this film. And I want to get into it because I think this movie gets a lot of hate, and I will say there are problems with it, but it is a pretty entertaining film. It's okay. I think it's slightly better than Thunderball in certain areas. Not totally, but in certain areas. Like, there's a scene I really like where James Bond is in this ship, and there are sharks real sharks, not animatronics or CG or any of that. It's real sharks following him through this boat and crashing through the walls and chasing him. Very impressive stuff. So I really enjoyed that scene. I really enjoy the action scenes, whether it's James Bond or motorcycle flying down these hills, and he's, using this truck as a ramp, and he's fighting people, and he has this gadget that shoots this dart out, and she thinks it's a blank, and he goes, delayed or whatever. It's delayed, and blows her up. So there's fun gadgets, fun action scenes. Rowan Atkinson plays a character in this movie who I would have never thought would have been in this movie. Never in a million years would I have expected Rowan Atkinson in a James Bond movie. And he just plays a really small character, really small role. And he doesn't even get mentioned here in the cast. I have to look for him. And I will say, if you're a Blofeld fan, Blofeld is played by Max von Sydow for 4 minutes, if that. So you have a cool casting of Max von Sydow as Blofeld, but for 4 minutes. The main Bond girls in this is Kim Basinger and Barbara Carrera. And I think that they do great jobs. And I will say, wonderful cast here. Wonderful cast. I think everybody did a great job. This character that Rowan Atkinson plays is called Nigel Smallfawcett. Yeah, so that's what I mean. As far as the cast goes, the action scene, Sean Connery coming back, I think he looks great in this movie. I know a lot of people he's too old. He's too old. I think he's fine. He's meant to be older. He's meant to be older. It's part of the story is that it's an older Bond. And I think he can still do the action scenes. He's still taking bumps. He's still falling down. And it's actually him. You can see it's Sean Connery. So it ain't like Sean Connery took a paycheck and was just I'm not going to do anything. No, he's doing all kinds of stuff in this movie. He's in great shape. And it was cool seeing an older James Bond, a guy who struggles a bit more. He ain't just picking up girls left and right like he used to. I mean, he gets to where he can, but it takes a minute. He gets rejected a couple times. He's getting beat up a little bit more. He's a little bit more slower. He's a little bit more flawed in a way. So I like that. That's a much more, it's James Bond. It's not superhero. He's not going through the room and shooting everybody, and he's still doing action scenes. He's still being James Bond, but it's a bit more grounded in this movie. I like that. I think that the villain is pretty fun. The guy that played the villain did a pretty decent job. And I like the set of this underwater. It's literally an underwater temple in this movie, which is way different than Thunderball, where that's where the location of one of the warheads is this temple underwater, which is a cool looking set. The main villain's having fun. I like that over the top portrayal of the main villain, not Blofeld, but the guy below him. The music is pretty bad, honestly. It fucking sucks. The only good piece of music is the theme song, Never Say Never Again, which I know a lot of people hate that song. I find it to be entertaining. It's catchy. It's catchy. It was cool seeing Sean Connery come back, but this one, it's a bit long, 2 hours and 14 minutes, and it dragged. It could have been an hour and a half, please. It could have been an hour and a half. Saying that right now, easily. Last night, wrestling show, and today, 2 fun weekend. Oh, that's good, man. But yeah, it is slow. There's some goofy scenes, whether it's Rowan Atkinson, his scenes are cringe. There's literally a scene that's supposed to be suspenseful where this villain has made this video game and they're playing it and they got a world domination type of thing, but it's a video game and it's supposed to be suspenseful. I found it to be very goofy. Some of the effects look bad. Like some of the green screen, some of that early digital work, the effects don't look that great. There's some parts where it looks very phony. And I thought that was definitely, something that stuck out. And I just think ultimately it's the same as Thunderball, where there's things I like about it, but I think overall it's a story that I just don't care for. It's a movie that I think is slow. Did it need to be made? Not necessarily. Is it one of my favorites? Not really. I think it's okay. I'll give it the okay. I'll give it the solid 3 out of 5. Either 3 out of 5 or 2.5 out of 5. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. It's okay. It's decent. Has its problems, but it is entertaining. It is okay. And yeah, that is the end of Volume 1, the Sean Connery era. So to give a quick recap in order this time, Dr. No is a lot of fun. From Russia with Love, I really like. Goldfinger is one of the best. Thunderball, I'm not a big fan of. You Only Live Twice, pretty big fan of that one. Diamonds Are Forever is fun. That's a fun one. Never Say Never Again is okay. It's okay. But anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for my thoughts on the James Bond movies. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. Thank you to everybody in the chat that showed up, and we'll see you on the next one. The Explorer 4 is out. See you guys later, and we're out of here. Bye.